being recorded.
All right.
A very good morning, a good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, How to Use Your Low Season to Sell More Business, with Kimberly Pung from Master Connection Associates. We do have a number of first-time joiners on the session today, so a very warm welcome. For those who don't know me, I'm Kate Bacon. I work for IACC. I'm based in the UK as Customer Relations and Events Manager. And now, as there are a number of participants on the line, we are going to mute, or we have muted the lines for the session so we can record it. Please use your chat boxes in the bottom of your screens for any questions. And at times, Kim will open the lines for any questions or any queries during the webinar. As always, for those unable to join, we will record today's session, and I will forward the recording together with the slides after the webinar. Now, let me hand you over to our presenter today, Kimberly Pung. Thanks, Kim.
Good afternoon and good morning to all of you. We have people from the Netherlands to New York, from Sweden to Charlotte, so it's exciting to be able to join all of you today and continue your series, the webinar series that IACC offers throughout the year. And Master Connection Associates is certainly just very proud and pleased to be a part of this all with you. So today, yes, our topic is how to use your low season to sell more business. And there we go. And I think it's funny in the industry that we always talk about the off season. And what we're going to look at today is, what does that really mean? I live in Minneapolis. For those of you outside the States, that's in Minnesota. We are on the border of Canada. If you don't live here or have never lived here before, never been here before, most people would think that we are about to enter a time in Minnesota that you just wouldn't want to go, right? It seems quite inclement. The winter here is difficult and harsh and cold. And so there is a tremendous focus within my state on the summer. In fact, we have a huge resort season here that runs from Memorial Day in May to Labor Day in September. In fact, we have a state law that public schools cannot go back to school until after Labor Day, so that it does not hinder the resort industry and their ability to capture that revenue over Labor Day. So certainly we all understand what it means to have a quote unquote off season. But I want to really hopefully change our minds today about what that looks like, and more importantly, what it can look like. Those of us, we have someone here from Sweden, we have some people on the East Coast. We obviously have a period of time when we have some snow and some sort of inclement times. Those in the South, you have periods of your season where it's quite hot, hurricanes, so on and so forth. So there is obviously a time each of us might feel like this isn't the most ideal time to be visiting our state, our destination. However, we have to change that mindset a bit, and more importantly, change the mindset of our guests. If you've been to Minnesota or the upper Midwest, the midwinter can be phenomenal, right? There's lots of amazing activities, from hockey to ice skating to ice fishing to snowmobiling, amazing ice bars, fun things to do outside. There is so much potential. In fact, when we had the Super Bowl here in 2018, we created a whole theme around the bold north and about being outside and embracing the outside, embracing the winter and embracing those activities. And we had Nordic
all guests
skiing
have been muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
Sorry, I just muted different. We had Nordic skiing demonstrations in the downtown in the middle of our streets, and huge snowmobiling acts where people were doing things with snowmobiles that you could never possibly imagine right in our downtown streets. And so I think in many ways, we personally have done a pretty good job of promoting winter within our state. But what's important, and what we're going to focus on today, is you have to find what works for you and stop saying this is our off season, because it is not. We do not have an off season, or we're not going to have an off season. Even group business people are going to enjoy the authentic elements of your destination in times that maybe not everyone is there. Not everyone loves to come in the high season, right? I was just in California this summer. We went to Lake Tahoe over the 4th of July. I will tell you, it is their high season. I will tell you, I'll never go back at that time again. But what's interesting in talking to the people in Lake Tahoe is by the end of July, early August, that quote unquote high season tails off tremendously. Everyone goes in July. it is beautiful there in August. It is beautiful there in September. And although they've maybe already had their first stitch of snow in the mountains, down by the lake and everywhere else, it's amazing. So it's just capitalizing on getting people to see it's more than just the 1 week of the 4th of July or other things that may be really drawing people, that other people are going to be actually very inclined to come to your destinations in what quote unquote is the low season because they don't want to be a part of the crazy. I did a training actually here in Minneapolis a year ago, January. The group was from all over the United States coming in for this meeting, and they were taking a half day after their full day of meetings, and they were going out and taking the group ice fishing. And they were so excited about the idea of walking on the frozen lake, and even more so driving a car on the frozen lake. And that was fascinating for them. And so, you know, if you think, oh, that sounds terrible, ice fishing in Minnesota in the winter is actually quite glamorous. I mean, you should see these huts they live in. There's full kitchens, there's bathrooms, it's warm, you can sleep in them. So sometimes it's just changing people's mindset around what it might look like to enjoy a certain destination in a time when we might normally not think of what that looks like. So I want us to commit, after we've spent the next 50 minutes together, to never ever catch ourselves saying value season or off season again. We are killing our own business by making our low times unattractive. And so what can we do to try to change some of those perceptions and what's happening? Because every one of us is in the same position. And I just want to make sure, are the slides moving along? If someone could just give me a quick chat, because I've muted you all. And are the slides moving along for everyone so they can see? We should have a cute umbrella slide coming up right now. Can someone just give me a thumbs up on the chat? Yes, okay, very good, thank you. All right, we are all, of course, in the same predicament, creating kind of our own monster, as I would say it, in creating this idea of the off season or the value season. But what's important, I think, in all of this is that we think about how to prepare better for what we would consider our low season or off season. So take a look at your occupancy. When is it that you really dip in occupancy? Where are your lower periods? It's going to be different for each one of you based on seasonality, based on just popularity of destinations. But when is that time when we would say we need to fill business in here? And then get creative about going after that business. But don't lead with discounting. Often we feel we go into these conversations already with some of our own baggage around our low season and value season. And so we think in order to entice people to get here, we've got to lead with the discount. No one knows your occupancy levels. Many often don't even know that it's not a great time to come to your destination during time of that year, unless we tell them. So we don't have to share so much about what's going on for us in a way to entice them to get there. And this is applicable to groups, to weddings, to leisure, events, any type of market and segment that's coming. There's going to be a period of time where we can entice them as to what's going on. So I want to start, and this is where I'm going to unmute our phones now for a moment. I'd like to hear from as many of you as possible and just share with us what
all guests have been unmuted
to you, right? So what is off season to you? So in order to make this fruitful, you of course need to tell us your name and where you are so we know what the destination is. But what is off season to you is going to be the first question. And then we're going to follow up with some other questions around that. So who would like to give us a good start here? Don't be shy. You're all on this webinar. You all figured you had a web.
Hi, I'm Olivia and I'm calling from London.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon.
Hi, calling from London, and our off season is July and August because everyone's on summer holidays, so there aren't that many people around. And we work for a conference event.
All right. So where are you struggling to get business at that time? Who necessarily, obviously all the people in Europe are on holiday, but there's a lot of other people who aren't, because those of us in the US don't get that really nice holiday off. We only get a couple of weeks. So, and in our couple of weeks, we're coming to London. But what are you struggling with in filling that time in July and August?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. What are you struggling most with in filling that time in July and August?
There's just no demand at all, especially for the larger conferences, because it's all corporate events that we do. So there's just not that demand in those dates.
Okay. And is there anything that you have been working on or currently doing to try to drive more business during that time?
We're trying to get more like graduates in, so using the summer holidays to our advantage when people aren't working to bring graduates in.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Thank you, London. All right. Who else? Before I just start calling on people.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Hi,
some encouragement for Lauren. Yes.
We actually close between Christmas and New Year's just because it's downtime for meetings here.
Okay. Which is fine, right? So you're not necessarily worried about filling business. Are there other times of the year where you have any other dips in occupancy that you're concerned about filling?
You know, it comes in waves, but you know, sometimes in the winter months like January, February, and then again sometimes in the summer.
Okay. And the summer mostly, again, a lot of corporate business, so they're not.
Yeah, everyone's on vacation.
Okay. All right. And are either you, I should say, and also there in London, partnering at all with your leisure sellers in figuring out how to fill those gaps with other type of business besides corporate?
Not sure.
My colleague, she handles the nonprofits. So typically, you know, they come during downtimes.
Okay. And is there a reason they're wanting to come during downtime?
Lower budget.
Budget, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's hear from someone else, perhaps overseas. There, Diane, maybe in Netherlands, or Alina in Sweden.
Lena here. We have the low seasons in the summer, June and August, and Christmas time.
All right. And what are you attributing the dip for your venue then during those times?
We are a conference venue. We are a conference venue, and the companies don't have conference in that time.
Okay. And are any of you, I mentioned it just a minute ago, but are any of you, is there any proactive approach for any of you in going after leisure travelers or transient travelers during those times?
We are looking for that to have leisure traveling for that time, not the Christmas, but in the summer, because Sigtuna is a big town it's a small town, but have a lot of guests, leisure guests in the summer.
Right. All right. And how about any of the others of you? Obviously, your off season is maybe very similar to what these participants have already shared. A big part of it being a lower time for corporate. Obviously, a lot of you are true conference centers, so you're relying a lot on that corporate type business. Obviously, one of the first avenues that one would look at would be looking at transient and leisure travel to fill some of those gaps during that time, because you're looking at a time then when people are traveling, right? In the summer, on holiday, and other opportunities when they're not having their corporate meetings because everyone's traveling. Well, where are they traveling to? And so I think one of the first avenues we can, of course, explore is partnering with the sellers on our team that are selling leisure and transient and looking for opportunities to do that. All right. So a big part of what we're looking at and what's important is how to market our destination in a smarter way. And I'll give you an example. We have done a lot of work with the University of Notre Dame. They are an IACC certified venue. I think they are a perfect example of some things that they have done and are doing well to attract people to Indiana, right? In the middle of winter. Those of you not familiar with Indiana, in the middle of winter, maybe not, again, your ideal spot to have a group function, to even go for leisure travel, unless, of course, you're a tried and true alumni of Notre Dame or a family member. And then, of course, everyone is flocking. But everyone is flocking, of course, on game day only. And so what the University of Notre Dame has done, of course, this took a lot of money to do, but they built this amazing, beautiful facility around the stadium, and has really made now the stadium a venue, right? The stadium and all the prestige that comes with that, even when a game is not going on, has become now a destination. And so capitalizing on, coming even to South Bend, Indiana in January and February, marketing how easily and accessible it is from Chicago, because they are just an hour outside of Chicago, the train accessibility, the transportation accessibility. Within an hour and a half or so, you find yourself in the beauty of South Bend, Indiana, and the beauty of the Notre Dame campus. I will say the only time I've ever been to Notre Dame is in the middle of January, and rest assured, it is lovely. The snow is lovely, the campus was lovely, and they, of course, have this amazing new destination and venue at which they can attract group business. They do concerts, they do events like never have they done before, by capitalizing on something that is unique and special and important to them. And so, like that type of destination, myself, obviously people in Sweden and Norway and Alaska, sleeping in igloos and doing all sorts of things that are really exciting and authentic, we have to make the best of what we are doing. So let's talk for just a moment about what makes your destination popular during a high season, what makes and attracts your corporate travelers there during the high season, and figure out what we can do to mimic that in other types of the year and attract some of these groups in other times of the year. So maybe aside from why they're not coming, but why are they coming? What is it about your destination, your venue, your center, your hotel that is making you popular during what you would call your high season? What makes you unique? What makes you special? What is the unique thing about your center, your conference center, your club, your hotel, your venue? No one knows what makes their venue great. Well, I think then this is part of the problem, right? What's really important, and I'll be really frank, we're going to spend an hour on the call today, and I don't have any magic pixie dust. I don't have any sort of magic approaches. This just takes some work. It takes some hard work. It starts thinking about how we can have compelling messages to fill those periods of time when we have lower demand. It's very easy to complain about it. It's very easy to say, oh, we'll just acknowledge it. In fact, Chauncey's closing down, which probably maybe is the best decision at that point. Why spend money if no one's coming? So certainly that is a good business decision to do so. But we can't just throw our hands up and say, well, there's really no demand for corporate during this time. There's really no demand for conferences that time, and expect that there are answers out there that don't take, I think, quite a bit of work in order to make sure that that's happening. So I think I can only tell by a few initials here. Some people have some great outdoor team building activities. I think maybe Cindy here, I can tell by the initials, has 370 acres, lake, walking, jogging trails, great collaborative space for team building and such. All right. So these are the things that we can attract. And so thinking about questions we have to ask, we have to know why our groups are coming, right? Why do they like it? Do they like the jogging trails? Do they like the lakes? Do they like the atmosphere? Do they like the spaces that we have? Are not those spaces equally interesting, fun, and even a totally different look at them when we come at what we call an off season? Or maybe even more enjoyable, right, in the summer versus the winter when they're coming. And so being able to think about how we can shift people's perceptions around what it is that they consider important. And when we're famous for something, right, be able to show them how we can teach those things and those opportunities in different off seasons and what we are doing. So what else do we have? We have some great activities. It looks like, oh, someone's heading off to another meeting. Anyway, thank you to, I think it was maybe Katie or Christina who said outdoor activities, and then Cindy with the Great Lake and jogging trails. What are other things that are popular for your destinations during your quote unquote high season? I've unmuted everyone, so you don't have to be afraid to talk. All right, well, let me share some ideas with you. All right, so some ideas, of course, are to just think about what makes you famous for, and then work with other partners, work with other vendors to create similar experiences in what might be the off season. So if you have, you know, super great lakes and trails and things, how are those lakes and trails accessible both in the winter and the summer? How can we teach people and get excited people about engaging with those opportunities during
All
those
guests
times?
have been muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
So that I just had to mute again quickly just to get some of that background noise out. But things that we can do in order to create these very memorable experiences. And one thing I think that's a really great opportunity is to think about loyalty programs with your frequent travelers, with your frequent businesses, and going to them and saying, you always book during this period, of course. If you booked a month earlier, if you booked a month later, we can provide you more value, or we have more flexibility because we can offer this, right? And so positioning the value that they can experience, positioning the flexibility that you can give them, and making those offers attractive in whatever way may be possible to them. And so making sure that we are indeed capitalizing on those opportunities. But what's, I think, even more important is to reach out to our guests and get feedback from them. You know, ask your guests what they love about your resort, what they love about your conference center, what keeps them coming back, not just groups, but leisure groups as well. And gathering those types of testimonials and stories will help you to give more detailed and personal stories and examples when you're selling to potentially off-season prospects. And so a big part of what we want to look at today is how we tell the story of our resort, our conference center, our destination, and maybe retell the story in a different way that frames up this potential off-season or low season in a very different way that's going to attract a different type of prospect, or attract a prospect that actually would appreciate coming during this different time of the year. And so, again, asking the questions, what makes them love your place during this time, again, finding out what those stories and testimonies might be so that we can create more memorable experiences, certainly for them, as we engage certainly in the process of what makes it look popular for them. So if we're looking at just pure seasonality, right, there's a lot of different things that we can take advantage of in the seasonality. Now, some of you are experiencing maybe a more dip in the summer because of, you know, groups not wanting to come during that time. We're experiencing a really different dip here in Minneapolis, given the seasonality of things. But we want to think about, you know, ice bars in the winter, flower making in the spring, wine making during the off season. Are there things within the destination, activities, whether it's whitewater rafting, whether it's hiking, whether it's, as you mentioned, some of the things that we can do with the lifts and the different venues around our places. Are there things that we can do that we can partner with people and create educational series, right? Create come and like a lunch and learn luncheon, but now you're going to weekend and learn, or you're going to weekend learn, you know, how to sail, or how to do whitewater rafting, or how to do winemaking, and things that we can do that can be team building type events for groups and corporate business, that can be fun leisure trips for our leisure travelers and vacations and things, but finding the things that are unique about each of the seasons and each of the times our destinations do provide, and finding ways to weave that into the stories that we're telling about how we sell our property. And storytelling is actually a very, very successful way of selling to our guests and to our customers. In fact, storytelling is the most popular way, apparently, to engage everyone's brains. And so the research will tell you that when you start telling story, that descriptive power of stories is affecting our receivers, right, our customers, both in the sensory and the motor cortex, which means that every part of the brain is being activated when we're telling a story. So when we're hearing a story, we're experiencing that, right, and we're synchronizing with that subject. And so I say that because storytelling can be a really great part of how we share different elements of our destination that maybe people aren't aware of, or be creative in how we're positioning elements of our destination, whether it's cold, hot, whether it's activities we can do, whether it's an abundance of breakout meeting spaces, but telling stories about what other guests and customers have done with those meeting spaces, what they have done with outdoor spaces, what they have done in creating a leisure experience, right? If you look at the trends, a lot of people are combining business with leisure trips. So if you're having a hard time attracting people during the summer, then talk about how this can be a great destination for a couple coming for a couple days of a meeting, and then extending and being able to stay a couple extra days on their own. So it's getting creative about what our destination can offer beyond just sort of the traditional way we look at things, which is blocking us out potentially of some different times during the year, or at least in our minds, making it very difficult to attract business during that time of year. So when we think about storytelling, we have to understand what makes our destination unique, what makes our property unique, what makes our venue unique, what makes our conference center unique, beyond just square footage, beyond just capacity, beyond just, rounds and squares and crescent rounds and this and AV and whatever. But the stories that are going to excite them about wanting to be and engage with our destinations and with our venues. So as we sell, our job is not to educate, but to excite people. And if we start that sort of journey where, oh, that's the off season, or we start with discounting, or we start with, even saying value season, we're already not sounding that excited about what it is that we have to offer. So making sure that we're positioning the times that our customers want to come with us and getting them emotionally excited about the different opportunities that's potentially an off-season can afford them, in respect to just it not being quite so crazy, with it perhaps offering more value, more flexibility, more opportunities to utilize the venue, to utilize the amenities and such, and using that as a real positive. So our stories connect us to our guests on an emotional level. And so what we need to do in our selling and take advantage of selling more business is be able to inspire our clients. And so what I want to inspire you to do is kind of rewrite the story about your quote unquote off season, right? First, it's getting together with the team and thinking about, what's causing the dip, as we kind of had a conversation about that earlier. Where do we find those dips? Why are we having the dips, right, that we have? And who else might find those times of year to be the ideal time to come to our venue, our destination? What types of activities we can attract with them? What types of unique things about our city, our state, that'll be fun for them to enjoy? How can we position this destination in a different way than perhaps people have ever thought of it before? And on top of that, because it's quote unquote off season, although we're not saying that out loud anymore, we can provide more value, right? We can provide more flexibility, and that will certainly be a great advantage to those coming. But they don't have to know that, right? They don't have to know that part of our story. The story we want to share with them is what an exciting time it is to come, all the compelling reasons why it is exciting to come during this time, the things that we have to share with them, the flexibility that it'll give them, and the uniqueness of being able to travel, certainly during that time. So it's important for us to sell in a way that is telling the story of our destination in a way that does get people to want to come and to want to be a part of that. So the goal is to create connections with our customers, to tell their story in such a way that we relate to them, we understand their unique needs, we connect the things that we have to what they want. That goes back to the basics of the selling process as we identify needs and then be able to sell specifically to those needs. So when our story connects with them and what they want and what they need in a very unique way, of course, that's how we build trust, and that's how we win business. So thinking about what your story is, I'm just going to give you about 2 minutes here to just kind of brainstorm. Some of you are with your teams, some of you are on your own, but I want you to brainstorm some of the uniqueness of your destination, of your conference center, maybe specifically the uniqueness of those places during your off season. But what are compelling reasons that we can get guests to come? We have to know why. They're wondering why, perhaps, so we have to have the answer to that why. So just spend about 2-3 minutes brainstorming with your team what you think are the compelling reasons why anyone would want to come to the destination, and then particularly during what we would consider a lower occupancy or low season, so that we have things in our arsenal to be able to share with our guests as they are intrigued about this time, or if we're trying to get people to shift to a different time of the year for various reasons. One, it helps us. Two, it might help them. But how do we find that win-win in between? So we're about 36 minutes past the hour. I'm going to give you till about 39 to consider what is compelling about your destination, about your venue, and I'll have a couple of you, of course, share what that might look like. All right, so I'll give you another 30 seconds. I'm going to take everyone off mute, and then I'd certainly like to hear some of the compelling reasons that you would want to, that would attract people to your destinations.
All guests have been unmuted.
Again, specifically during what you might consider to be a lower occupancy time. So let's hear from Charlotte. You're right at the top there of the list there, Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. So basically, I work for a conference and events company. So we have a number of venues in London, and the one I particularly look after is near London Bridge. So I guess the highest selling point in our summer is really being by the Shard, being near Borough Market, seeing Tower Bridge, all of that. So it's something to do after the conference.
Okay. And so do you find, Charlotte, that those corporate guests are kind of amenable to the idea of a business leisure trip, that it is attractive for them to come during a time that maybe aren't a lot of corporations are traveling, but seen as though they could, you know, do a lot of sightseeing in the afternoons and evenings outside of the meeting, doing a sightseeing by extending the stay? Does that seem to be an attractive presentation to these corporate guests and meeting planners?
Well, to be honest, I've never really thought of this angle before. We have a lot of clients who are based in London already, so it wouldn't really target them, but it would work better for people maybe more up north or not in London, or maybe not even in the UK, maybe looking more further afield. But yeah, so it's not something I've ever really thought of before, but it could be an angle for like globally looking at companies abroad, maybe.
Right. And I think that's a really good point. And I think maybe one of the most important points of our time together today is thinking of the things we haven't thought of before, right? We obviously acknowledge this is a time that perhaps we call low or lower occupancy. And what do we do about it? It takes strategy, it takes thought, it takes working together with the other markets within, you know, a territory or whatever, other sellers, as we target perhaps a different group of people during this time, or ones that we know might help us to fill that business. We have to be proactive beyond just, you know, sort of resigning ourselves to the fact that this is considered our low season. So that takes a lot of creativity. That takes thinking out of the box. That thinks targeting a different customer than maybe we've ever targeted before. And for each of you, that'll be a little different as you think about who might be that special prospect that is going to find this off-season time to be a very attractive time to travel. I don't know about you, but for me personally, as a business person, when my business travel is paid for, right, that's attractive to me. To add on a couple of days on my own is not that much of an expense. To be able to sightsee and do things in the afternoons and evenings outside of my meeting is a very little expense to me. So when we think about all of our customers, the end user might be the one that ends up being the most influential for us as we think about attracting the type of individual that maybe is never going to get to Europe, or those European travelers that are never going to get to the States unless they have the luxury of going with their business, because their business is going to be paying for the majority of those travel experiences. So I think what this does is challenge our thoughts about what that traditional customer or guest might look like, in a way to get creative about how we're going to fill this time, what attracts people during off times, and then the people that are coming during that time, what's bringing them there at that point? What are their stories? When you have a successful program on site and that's taken place in the middle of the summer, that's taken place maybe closer to the holiday or into January and February, you know, get referrals and get, testimonials from those guests as they're leaving as to what made this a great time to come, what did they particularly like, and utilize those testimonials in your storytelling. One, utilize those referrals, obviously, to go out and try to find other businesses or other customers that are like them, that are really going to appreciate that time, whether, again, it's a value time, whether, again, it's just not as crazy time, or whether it is indeed a time that they can take advantage of other features and other elements of the destination that make it a really make it an attractive time, of course, to want to be, you know, in Sweden, in Philadelphia, in Chapel Hill, in the Netherlands, in New York, wherever, of course, we may be. And so it's understanding what's drawing people here, understanding what that angle can look like, right, during what we consider to be the off or value season, and going after that business in a very proactive way. But again, it takes that preparation that we talked about earlier. It takes understanding that occupancy and understanding, of course, most importantly, what types of business groups, weddings, leisure, events are going to help us to be successful during this time. And so being very thoughtful about how we do that, because our customers just don't go away, right? There's always going to be a customer that is going to find different times of the year very attractive, or they're going to be open to doing travel, to doing events, to doing groups during different times of the year. So it's important that we stay in contact with all of our key accounts, with all of our past guests, with all of the leads coming in, that we're utilizing that whole approach. Remember, when we think about the different buckets that new business comes from, right? Our new business comes from existing business. So who is coming at other times of the year that might have another event, another program that would come during the off season, that would come during the summer, that would come around a holiday shoulder time? Reaching out to those existing customers and finding other parts of their organization, other parts of their business or companies that they may be connected with that are going to be the perfect fit for that. So finding that new business by growing our existing business, getting close to them, understanding their needs, understanding what's motivating them, understanding why they come certain times of the year, and then what are those compelling messages that might get them to come other times of the year. So that new from existing, then we have, of course, the new from old, right? So leads that have come in that maybe didn't quite go anywhere, past business that has come at other times of the year, or even during off season that's come, that we can go back and reconnect with those customers. Because again, they're not going away. We have already some type of relationship, or at least some type of connection with them that leads us down a path that hopefully creates.
All guests have been muted. You can
again,
unmute your line by pressing *6.
That rapport with them. And then, of course, the third bucket, so new from existing, growing those key accounts, growing those customers that are already doing business with us, finding out, again, you've always booked during this time, might you be willing to come here or there, or if there's other business that would find those other seasons attractive. The other second bucket is new from old, so going back to old leads, old accounts, dead accounts, so and such, and trying to find if there's business there. And then the third bucket is the new from new. I find that we spend a lot of time on new from new and it takes a lot of energy. But when we think about prospecting, that's what everyone thinks is I got to go out and find more new customers. Well, the shortest and least expensive sales cycle is to grow business within your existing business. So going back to those customers, staying connected with them, making sure that you're connected year-round with them. So not just when you're reaching out with them by phone, but through your social media, through your LinkedIn, through your all your presence that you have online is creating kind of a year-round connection and a year-round what we'll call storefront, right? So we're going to leverage a couple things when it comes to social media. One, we want to leverage our relationships with our existing and our potential customers by staying connected and engaged with them. So we can position ourselves as trusted advisors. We can position ourselves as being really well recognized or have a lot of insight into the industry by things that we post, certainly about meetings, things we post about events, things that we post about our own destination. So staying kind of in everyone's wheelhouse, so to speak, by keeping an engagement level on social media where people see that presence and they're going to think of you more often, but then also leveraging Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest to create interest in activities that can be done in the off season. we're all really good at posting things that are when, you know, things are great, when we have a lot of people in house, or doing a lot of things. What we have to think about is posting pictures of activities and meetings and events that are taking place during our off season, and showing the value of what happened with that particular group, or something unique or special that they did that maybe is unique to coming to the off season. And so using those platforms that we have to leverage what those compelling messages are during, again, what we would call our quote unquote off season. So I would ask you, as part of this, is what does your social media campaign look like? Are you including publicizing and activities that are showcasing what you would consider the low season or the value season? Are you giving people compelling reasons to want to call you and talk to you about coming to your destinations and to your venues during your off season? And if it doesn't look like that now, then what could it look like, right? So what could we be doing with Facebook, with Instagram, with LinkedIn, with Twitter? There's so much power right now in all of our individual electronic devices, so much quality in the photos and the videos that we could be taking, that we should be capturing different events, different activities that are being done. Like if I use the example going back to us having the Super Bowl here in 2018, all the great pictures of people Nordic skiing in the streets, or we have this amazing Nordic skiing event in the middle of winter that's all done by luminaries. You know, if you have a fun thing that's going on in off season, that's attractive to people. Maybe the leisure guest is going to see that. They're going to say, I want to go take a vacation. I want to take a weekend there. Maybe you come up with packages that are designed around experiencing your destination during those specific times. But again, it's not all about the package and the discount. What it is about is your stories and your ability to create a compelling reason why people would want to come during this time. And if you, in the last few minutes, kind of struggled as to what those compelling messages might be, then that's where you need to take some time with the team and kind of brainstorm. What does our off-season look like, and how can that be really attractive to certain groups, and what groups might those be, so that we can take a much more proactive approach at doing so. And once we've brainstormed those ideas, once we've come up with compelling messages, once we've identified what those stories are, that we share those stories on social media. We show people what we're doing. We're showcasing these different times of year, different times of season, different activities that can be done that really express the brand, that express the venue, that express the destination, that are going to engage people to follow, that are going to engage people to comment on the posts, that you're going to get people, of course, to like and comment on the post. And that's all going to generate excitement around this particular time of year that maybe people hadn't considered, maybe people hadn't thought of. But you're really looking and targeting a completely perhaps different customer or segment than you perhaps have considered before. So I want you to challenge yourselves to be thoughtful about all the proactive ways that we can play a role in this to make sure that we are indeed creating this excitement around these particular times of years. And that goes with blogs, that goes with sharing those stories. There are so many resources at our fingertips that allow us to share the story, right? To share what makes our destinations great, even during these times. We need to be making sure that we're sharing that story and that we're making that a very popular idea and popular time. So just to recap our discussion, here's some pictures, some potential Instagram pictures. This is actually a really fun one that Mary, one of our trainers, was doing an event in Texas. Obviously, a quite warm time of year for us to be in Texas during this time. But this was kind of a camping themed meeting. And so if you take advantage of maybe camping or the outdoors being a really unique element of your venue, your destination, bring that indoors. Bring that into the experience that people can have during a time of year that maybe it's not particularly clement to be outside and hiking, like perhaps Houston in the middle of July, or in some of our other destinations in the middle of winter. But camping and campfiring and all those things are equally fun in the winter as they are in the summer. But just because the outside may not be ideal, we can create experiences, we can create activities around what makes our destination unique by bringing kind of the outdoors in, and then showcasing that on our social media platforms and sharing with others what is going to make that unique about our certain destinations. So writing a blog, writing articles about something in the industry, writing articles about something about our destination, recording a video that's teaching something interesting about your area, about activities they can do in the area. Maybe again, there's some unique winemaking, flower arranging, whitewater rafting. So teach people how to do that and then say, hey, come do this, right? So finding ways to make it fun and exciting around what our destinations can definitely offer and be a benefit to us. So as we wind down, I'll give you a minute or so here just to ask some questions if you have any. In fact, if you have any questions, why don't you go ahead and start loading them into the chat, and then they'll be ready for me here in a minute after I just briefly kind of recap where we've been. But as a recap, let's think about, most importantly, changing our own mindset about what we consider to be the off-season, looking at our own paradigms around our struggles or challenges in selling a particular time of year, and rewriting the story about what that could look like and what the experience could certainly be for our guests who are coming during this time of year, and what's going to be important for them to play a role in. So rewriting what that story is, changing our paradigm about what that could be, so that we can definitely attract a different type of guest. Are there any questions that I can answer that'll help just further our understanding of how to use our low seasons to sell more business? No questions from anyone? That's good. I hope that means our questions have been answered and we're all feeling a little bit confident. But I think just, again, back to our thoughts about what it looks like, it's all about working smarter, right? Not harder. And this will take work, right? It's easy to say, oh, this is the low season, and just sort of shuffle that off to, economics and to, different things about our destinations that, or just what's going on within the world, people's travel and whatever that's going to influence that. But to think about how we can be smarter and more proactive about how we're selling this time of the year. Don't shoot our own selves in the foot by discounting, by apologizing before we even realize that this could not even be an issue for some of the guests and customers that are coming during that time. But also having very compelling reasons as to how to create, compelling packages for these meetings. Again, combining leisure and business and leisure. That's the whole new trend with the leisure, right? This is a really strong trend in how people are traveling in 2019 and into 2020. And so I think we can capitalize on the idea of people vacationing during the summer, and maybe making that an attractive time for people to do a business trip and tacking on leisure after that. And so thinking about how we can be promoting and proactive about the value of our destinations during times of the year that generally would not be considered more attractive, and then talking about that in terms of flexibility, right, and options, not just always about rate, not just always about that being the only reason why somebody would want to come during that time. So I thank you for your time and participation today. I will certainly be available here for a number of minutes. We'll stay on the line if there are any questions that people were simply too shy to ask or would prefer to ask privately. I'll unmute everyone
All
at
guests
this
have
time.
been unmuted.
In fact, some of you were probably muted. Maybe some of you were asking questions I didn't hear. But I'm happy to stay on if there are any additional questions. Otherwise, thank you for your time. Good luck. And remember, there really isn't an off season if we make the best of it and we're really smart at selling. And that is our job, to be sellers, right? We're not just order takers. And so going out and being proactive about how we position this time of year that may be difficult for us or that may be lower demand for us, in making sure that we're bringing in the right guests and that it's going to be profitable for us as well. Thanks, everyone.